every C5 Corvette is a bazooka.
Tactical nuke incoming!
I got us new gloves. They're ribbed for our protection. Barely there. You can barely feel it. Feel it.
Can you feel it? Oh yeah.
These won't fit me. They're really tight. All right, we are moving on this car, and let me tell you why. Let me give you a little of a hint, a little secret. This is not like the 4-rotor. The 4-rotor is a lifelong dream passion project, and that is pushing along. We'll talk about that in another video. This has a very distinct deadline. You're hearing it here first. We are rushing and rushing to get this thing completed very quickly because it's a YouTube project car. We got to make it or you guys lose interest. Today we've got a lot of parts in to move the engine build along as well as get this chassis ready to go off to the frame rack. I am one of the worst YouTubers. Actually, there's a lot of comments that probably agree with me on that because I just don't remember to unbox things for you guys. I do it for myself. I'm very, very selfish. TurboSource sent me the kit of all kits. This is a beautiful set of hardware. Hard bent lines for the oil feed. Nice V-band clamp there. Is that oil return line? Well, we're gonna find out. We're gonna hook up what we got in today, which is this right here. Elliot, that runs Turbone, is a very good friend of mine, and honestly, the single reason, if you had to point out a reason why the 4-rotor actually began, actually took action, he was a very big supporter. He was the one who introduced me to Abel. So, a little bit of a matchmaker. Elliot makes these cast manifolds that really standardize how the RX-7 world operates. And what's so important about that is this is part of the secret sauce as to why I can even put a turbocharged 2-rotor into a Corvette and claim the sort of torque and horsepower that we're about to produce. It's stuff like this that makes RX-7s more reliable and easier to maintain and harder to unwrap. Jesus, there's gonna be nothing in here except like a small pebble. This is one of the 2 styles of cast manifolds that TurboSource makes. This is the little shorty. That side is of course the side that the engine makes love to. This side is the side for the turbo. Everybody except for Jarrett's gonna recognize that this is a divided T4 housing.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a divided T4 housing.
Just kidding, it's a T6, Jarrett. You totally got that wrong. No, it's actually T4. So one of the biggest disagreements that people had on the last video about the LS versus 2-rotor weight was, oh yeah, now add a turbo and add the manifold. Sorry, but this only weighs 6 pounds. Right here, we also have the ability to have individual EGTs, exhaust gas temps, or also back pressure. You use one of them for back pressure to make sure the turbo that you're using is the correct size for what you're trying to do. Let's go ahead and put this on that, and then take my 4508, which is the same frame as the turbo that's going onto the car, and really get a good look at how this is all gonna line up in the engine bay. Let's see if the shoe fits. Boom, science right there. That was, there was no guesswork on that one.
Well, do you have bolts for it?
Jarrett? I do. Oh my god, he did actually include bolts for it. So this is the package that comes with this. If you could purchase it separately, obviously, but this little kit right here is pretty sick. So like I said, turbo feed and return lines. There's also going to be coolant. I'm assuming that's what this is. Coolant and return. Oh, you know what? We'll see. We'll see. Nice fittings and fittings. No, these aren't fuel, these are just oil or coolant, so that hard bend is perfect. More and fittings. Those are definitely the studs for these. Or no, hold on. Those might be for these. You know what's really nice about this, Jarrett?
What?
We have the tool to put these in properly. This is meant for that. Do you know what goes on this?
Exhaust. Out.
Oh, you know what? You could almost do that. That'd be like the biggest waste of time and money is to take this and then make a downpipe straight from it. It would work. One of the worst feelings in the world for any car guy is when you don't tighten these all the way and you're undoing the nut off of the turbo and you need to pull the turbo right off and this starts unthreading from the manifold, and so then some of these are in, some of those are out. That is not a fun time. I'm gonna guess that this, let's look over here. So on a stock 2-rotor, it's all about oil. And this is traditionally the oil feed line for the turbo, or in twin turbo kit. And I'm gonna guess that this vibrant setup right here is for this. And this crush washer, this oil sucks. We're not gonna crush it. Oh, that's the right thing. It's just a nice, solid, tight fit. So we'll just set that on there. Again, we're gonna run a lot of very stock looking parts to this car. What the stock car should have been if the RX-7, the FD, was built in today's day and age. These are the parts that should be on it. So I'm gonna guess something like that. That's super clean. It's out of the way. It doesn't get in the way of your thermostat if you have a standard thermostat temperature setting for your coolant. Obviously, here's the stock secondary fuel rail. We're not gonna be running any of that, but let's go ahead and let's just try it. Look at how clean that is. That is just so clean. Oil return line is right here. That's always a pain in the ass. It's getting your oil back in from a turbo over that way. It's not threaded, so they make like an adapter for that spot. So that takes care of the oil flow and return. Coolant, it's very weird that you see coolant coming from basically down here and up here, and you think that those are related, or at least identical. They're not. Your feed line for coolant comes from right here to the turbo, and then goes out of the turbo to down here. Oddly enough, that's the complete flow. Well, let's throw the 4508 in here.
Turbo just sits right on that.
That's the short, stubby approach to it, whereas the one that he hand built because of the needs and space requirements on the 3-rotor, this was also made by Turbo Source, but of course my needs are very unique. I'm a very unique needs type of person, and so this is a little bit longer runner. This is definitely considered a short runner, and there is a lot of argument. Both of them have their benefits. The performance difference, I think, is negligible. This is my first time I've ever running in my life a short one, but the theory is that the closer you are to the exhaust heat, fires, and explosion, the higher performance, that the turbo can spool quicker, not just because of shorter distance. The distance itself, to me, isn't really the issue. It's the heat. That, okay, you know what, you're taking all the energy out of the exhaust as best as possible. This is the 4508 in a 4202 frame. It is ultimately close to the turbo we'll be running here. Even that massive of a turbo is pretty damn close to fitting. So this turbo's ran for the 3-rotor, so everything's meant to flow a 3rd rotor. Everything's bigger. The type of turbo that we're running for the 2-rotor is meant for responsiveness, not necessarily monster, high-end, obnoxious power numbers that really don't mean anything other than, oh, cool YouTube video. This is actually meant to perform. There you go. That is precision. Look at this. With minimal adjustment, that goes, you can actually see it from my view, straight down into the turbo feed line. Yeah, right there. Look at that. Rotating the whole center assembly is one thing. You obviously don't want to put oil in the coolant system, and you don't want to put ins and outs. Look at it this way. There's the restrictor line. So for those of you that were going to try and call me out, I knew what was going on. I just wanted to give you a good point of reference because I can't spin the center rotating assembly all the way. That is the feed side. Why is it smaller, you ask? Well, it's actually restricted because you don't want to flood the damn thing. You actually want oil to drip into there and then get out of the turbo as quick as possible. Contrary to just traditional thought of more oil is better, that is not the case in turbochargers. This one has a built-in restrictor. For the most part, that should be fine. All right, well that's beautiful. Nice clearance there for the exhaust housing, even though this is a larger exhaust housing. What's important to know is that the center rotates separate from the exhaust housing and the compressor housing. So ignore the fact that those aren't lined up if the shots show that. I wonder if we want to have the air come up this way. Probably the best because there's so much room. I'm curious. Let's get a rough estimate of where this turbo ends. I'm gonna say, without much effort, I'm gonna say 16 inches. We are, oddly enough, running into space issues, but the goal here is to use off-the-shelf type of parts to show Rotary has a place in the world still. That being said, the frame rail, the part that's bent, is actually giving us a little bit of a challenge. I suspect, realistically, this is a good blessing in disguise. Take a look at this. I know this from heart. The frame rail to frame rail on an RX-7 is 28 inches. This is closer to 29, almost 30. And I mean that between these. This one is torqued inward and back and up. So I know that we'll gain a little bit of space bringing this one back to its original position. This is the weak spot of the frame. You can tell on this side, it's not nearly as weak because it hasn't been hit. What I'm suspecting we may do is the turbo is going to end up somewhere in here. So small, somewhere in this area. Actually, if it ends up, let's take a look at that. Let's assume that this is the bell housing that we're going to use. It's going to actually be somewhere back here. That gives us right about till 9 inches where the divot comes in. So let's see. It's saying that the back of the bell housing is somewhere in there. Oh my God. Look at that, dude. If that's 9 inches right there, look at where 9 inches goes on the frame rail. 9 inches is right there. We just gained tons of space. The turbo is gonna be all the way back here. It's actually meant for it. Holy crap. We are, look at this. We're in really good shape. That's even further apart from each other.
The Corvette was like, hey, put a turbo right there.
Put a turbo right in this spot. My alternative plan was maybe to reinforce this with some plating, cut into this area deeper. But that does not seem to be the case that's needed here. Wow, the world was good to us today. That's really nice. It's gonna fit inside of that. That's how far back that turbo is gonna be, is right here. Jared, get a wider shot. Look at this. In the grand scheme of things, there's a turbo right back here. That pretty much sums up what we're doing for the engine and turbo and the core of the heart of this rotary Corvette. But we have issues with the actual chassis, obviously bending it, but connecting the motor to the chassis and connecting the motor to the drivetrain, getting that power, even though it's a little bit of torque, all the way through the T56 and down to the ground. Nodder from Built to Apex is helping make that happen.
So I could actually fit the whole subframe on the new CNC, and then we can just notch out whatever we need to notch out.
Oh, nice.
For the pan, and it would look super clean. Right?
Yeah.
And then maybe just some cover plates welded in for wherever we cut out, and then done deal.
Awesome.
Yeah, the new machine is 60 inches by 30 inches build plate. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So the whole thing will fit on the existing plate, no problem. Are we sure we have to modify it though?
It comes down to how deep we end up with the bell housing.
Right. Because I was gonna say, for the oil pan, we can easily clear and make it as flat as possible. I mean, as thin as a ½ inch in the front, and then a nice custom pickup tube to go back into the sump.
Yeah. So the question then to me is, this is lowered because the actual support for it is down, but when it comes up, it gets really close to even just the irons and rotor housings actually hitting. So it is, that ½ inch is fine, but we would have to solve some sort of motor mount.
Yeah, right. And then it's a REW block.
Yeah.
Can we change the front cover?
We can change the front cover, yeah.
So we could do like an early 13B and then just a very easy front engine plate.
We could, yeah.
Right? So we use the stock location, early 13B front plate. So we just need a nice, quick, easy billet front brace pan. If we have to clear this, we can do that on the CNC. And then you get the bell housing and input shaft figured out, and I'll swap in.
Adapter for the bell housing, that's gonna be it. What I'm thinking is I'm gonna pull that torque tube out, and then maybe bring it to your shop.
Sure.
And then we can look at input shafts and whatnot more specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my fear is that to even just get an adapter in there is going to make the bell housing way too far out.
Right.
Which maybe they'll have to clearance the bell housing.
Adapter from tube to bell housing.
Correct.
Yeah, I got you. I count for at least an inch.
Yeah. Okay.
I think at least an inch is important, because we need bolt head clearance to take into account, and then hopefully hopefully we can even do it without like bolt heads getting in the way of each other.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, but at the same time, we don't know that because you don't have the new bell housing yet, right?
No, I mean I can take the one off of the 4-rotor.
Right.
As it'll be identical.
Because I was gonna say, it's not necessarily like the new bell housing could not be this deep.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, here, let me check the depth of the.
Yeah.
This one is a particularly weird example because it's machined from that ProMaz guys. And, and it's nice, but downside is it is not stock depth.
Right.
So it's a little deceiving. So give or take, just right under 7 inches depth. So I assume a stock one, which is what we're gonna use for this.
Yeah. We could always make a custom bell housing if we have to. I mean, it is a possibility. Right?
Yeah, true.
Because that way you don't have to take the one out of that car, and then that solves the whole axial displacement issue.
That would be the
right? Because then you don't need an adapter. We just design it straight to that.
yeah.
That might be the way to go.
Not that I think that people are going to want to repeat what we're doing, but that would make it very repeatable.
It would, yeah. I'm gonna repeat it.
Okay, good.
And then, of course, we're gonna put the 4-rotor in the Lamborghini afterwards.
That's the ultimate plan. Yeah.
Sweet. All right, man. I'm gonna get out of your hair.
All right,
I'm
sounds
gonna go
good.
see Abel. I'll see you real soon.
All right, that makes it pretty straightforward what we need to do here. This is getting ready for the frame rack tomorrow. We got to pull that bazooka, the torque tube, out of this car, so that way everything from the transmission forward can go over to built to apex. That's got to come out. Jared, you want to do that? I'll hold the camera here.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
First step of action.
You have to take that action.
Okay. I'm gonna take back the camera.
Okay, okay, right on. I got duped into doing this. Threw on my official battle worn
No one
Rob
cares.
Dahm merch. Can't even order it now, so you're right. But this one is garage worn. Look at that. We went out to Harbor Freight and picked up some really cheap crap to get this, because we're gonna be isolating things and things are gonna be moving, and we have to take the torque tube out, which looks like a bazooka, and I don't want it to go off, and we don't know if the transmission is even going to hold itself up. You Corvette guys are like, I already know. Cool, you're not gonna be helpful on this video. So we're gonna jack the car up, use jack stands, pull the plate underneath the torque tube, I guess, and then hold the torque tube up with this baby jack, disconnect it from the transmission. We'll find out. We'll find out what, I don't know, step 4 or step 3 is like question mark, and then the meme 5 is profit.
I see a lot of bolts here, Rob.
Someone's gotta keep a Corvette together, Jared. It's not hopes and dreams.
You better get the drill.
Oh my god. Oh my god. It's like, okay, Jared's just being dumb. Oh my god. They're like machine gun. There's the transmission right there. So we'll definitely have to undo these bolts. So the torque tube is a magical piece from here all the way to there. And it's currently being laid down on this. That's a weird design that they have like, this isn't that thick of piece of metal, and they're really concerned about every 2 inches having something there. Okay, well, you know what this means to me, Jared? This means let's get that lightweight aluminum jack, and we'll jack up this bell housing. All right, so Jared actually did the fun part of getting this thing set up. So we are currently stabilizing the bell housing, which is connected to the torque tube. She's not gonna drop when I start undoing all these bolts. Before we get any further though, I do want to take a quick look at the transmission and see if the transmission is being held up, because my fear is we let that jack down with this out of the way, everything comes down, and then now we've got a problem because the transmission would have to come out if we're going to take the car to the shop. My dream is that we take that end off, we unbolt all these, and then this whole thing pops out and comes down, and the transmission just stays up in the car. Wow, there we are. There is the torque tube. It does look pretty apparent that this transmission is going to sag the moment we take that down. So instead of causing ourselves problems, let's get the big jack, put it on the trans. So there we go, we got the transmission supported, but I'm a little worried. There are a handful of bolts here, but there might be 1 or 2 up deep on the top side that I can't get. If that's the case, then the transmission's coming out right now. For the viewers, this side and the other side look pretty much the same. Imagine this, but backwards. Thankfully, Jarrett pointed this out, and he mentioned, Rob, what about the slave cylinder when you go to lower this? I was like, oh man, good call, dude. There. We're gonna stop right there, take a look at the transmission. We're gonna take a look at the transmission. We're gonna take a look at the transmission. We're taking a look at the transmission. So, there we go. That is the shift linkage, all separate from the torque tube. Everything is off of what I think the torque tube has connected to it. We'll find out. And pull this assembly. So I'm holding my feet are holding the far end, and my hands are holding this end. Oh, you've got to be joking. It's hitting the inside of the torque tube channel. I don't know. Okay, we're pulling the transmission. We are now double stacked on all that. Got this last bolt to pull out. Teeter-tottering off of yours. Don't do it. Oh, it's just stuck on the... You ready for this moment, Jarrett?
I've been ready for about 3 hours.
Look at that overhead press.
Oh, that's a wrap. Okay.
Next step is the carb wrapping. Hidden in every C5 Corvette is a bazooka.
Tactical nuke incoming!
I love that basically from this point on, any sort of power handling equipment we need is already done. Piece. That definitely is inside of the torque tube. So this is the hydraulics kick this out. I want to use this to my advantage. Oh, that's the solution. Look at that. That's the first step of a rotary engine ever being connected up to a C5 drivetrain. That's a pretty sick moment. That's how the video ends.
That's how the video ends? That's,
This is still going. Stop. You gotta stop it.
that's all they
Video
get?
should have ended.
They get that? and
They get
that's-
that. It's like an end, right?
Why are you making like 0 pounds of boost? Fucking 200 miles per hour yet?